Hey there, internet. Massive content warning, FYI, because this is going to be an intense video if you could not tell based upon the title of the video. Content notice, we are going to be talking about HIV, AIDS, and the AIDS epidemic and all of the things that go along with that. And if you are young like me, I'm 22, and I didn't know a lot of this history, so be prepared for this to be some heavy fucking shit, because the reason that I want to discuss this issue is that I didn't know a lot about the AIDS epidemic, which is silly. It's silly. This is my history. This is the history of my people. But it's just the same as I don't know much about Stonewall, except for what kind of circulates about it once in a while. So this is about the HIV/AIDS epidemic. My friends and I went to, we visited Chicago this past Martin Luther King weekend, and we visited the Art AIDS America Chicago art exhibit, I think is what it's called. I'm not 100% sure if I'm remembering that correctly, but I will definitely have a link to their website down in the description below so that you can check that out if you would like. They have some pictures of some of the artwork that is in the exhibit, but there's a lack of context if you don't have the little cards next to them to read, which are the part that are usually the emotional part where you want to, lose your mind. I was not emotionally prepared for how difficult this situation was going to be, and I want to tell people what it was like to be there, and not only what it was like to be there, but the solemn importance of this piece of our history. Even though I'm not a gay man, I know gay men, I know gay cis men, and gay cis men were the people who were targeted the most by media, and they were scum. They meant nothing. Some of the things they had some placards. So they had these placards in one of the rooms that had some different quotes from people who said some things about HIV positive gay men, and even by the standards of the fucking shit that people say today, I was floored. It was awful. Oh my god. And this is something I also didn't know about HIV, and it's really fucked up that we don't know this, but one of the symptoms of HIV is skin lesions. It was visible. Before there were medications available to help treat some of these symptoms, people just went around without any treatment. And so one of the things that was really common was having lesions all over your body. So it's like if you had the bubonic plague, you were immediately noticeably visible to the rest of society, and they were treated like garbage. They were treated like they deserved to be sick and that they deserved to die, and it was awful. And some of the art that came out of this awful situation was this complex mixture of beautiful hope and crushing despair, and people who really thought that they were gonna make it and then didn't, and lists of names. And oh my god, guys, I don't know if you know this about me, but I cannot fucking handle lists of names. When Pulse happened last year and Anderson Cooper was reading the names of the people who had died, I was I was like, Anderson Cooper, who is a professional journalist, can't keep his crying shit under control during this situation. There is no way that I can do that. I cannot handle lists of names. And there were several different things that were like that, and some of the imagery was also very sexualized, because that was what it was then. To be a gay man was to be either chaste, or by being sexual you were automatically part of that group of HIV positive gay men, even if you absolutely did not. Even if you were having safe sex and everything, a lot of people had this internalized hatred towards themselves for being sexual beings just because of the way that gay men were being treated at that time. And a lot of this doesn't even cover that there were women who were also dealing with this. But the issue is that the central group that was being targeted was gay men. One of the really fascinating things about multiple art pieces, in fact, in this exhibit, were that some of them were painted or created with infected blood or infected semen, which was really interesting. There was a I want to call it like a line drawing almost. Like it would be like if you were using an ink pen, but instead of using an ink pen, you were using a mixture of HIV positive and negative blood to draw something. That one was really interesting. There was a bar of soap that was made out of like soap and semen and whatever else is required to make a bar of soap stay in like one form. There was also a Band-Aid that had been ripped off and like placed in a little plaque thing, and the Band-Aid part that touches the wound was covered with blood, which I assume was infected blood, and someone had taken charcoal and drawn a face in there, which I kind of assume was meant to look like the face of Jesus, but that's just my rough interpretation. I don't remember what it actually said on the placard. So that in and of itself was just striking to me, the literal use of HIV positive blood to create art, and just so many other things where people felt unclean, they felt dirty, they felt like there was something wrong with them, aside from just being sick. You know, they thought that it was a moral failing on their part of some kind, because that's how people were treating them. And in addition to the many artworks that were the kind where you don't fucking touch it because it's art, there were a couple of interactive exhibits, which I will show you one of the things about it right now. Give me a second. So I did bring a couple of things home from the exhibit. This piece of paper, it has some text on it, but it kind of doesn't matter. I honestly really don't know what the fuck that's supposed to mean, but the point of this is that there were just a stack of these blue papers in the middle of the floor in one of the rooms, and I was kind of like, and then, you know, if there's something in the middle of the room, then on one of the nearby walls there will be the placard with the information on it. And this installation was intended for people to take a piece of paper and bring it with them and sort of spread the art itself across state lines, and it was supposed to symbolize the spread of the disease. So you visit this exhibit and you take this piece of paper, and who knows how many thousands of people have one of these pieces of paper. And that was I'm getting tingles right now thinking about it. It's very, like, literally, this is an extremely emotional topic. And I have one other thing that I brought home. It's another thing where you're encouraged to take one. So there was just like a poster there, and then like a stack of like folded posters that you're intended to take with you, and I will show you that too. Be prepared. This is fucking fucked up as all hell. So it's on this almost sort of newspapery material. It's a little bit thicker than standard newspaper, but it's still that type of material. And this all reads like, oh, well, here, y'all can fucking read this shit super easy. If you were alive today, he would be at this opening. If she were alive today, you'd be texting her right now. If you were alive today, he would be going gray. If they were alive today, they could tell you about getting arrested at City Hall. If she were alive today, you'd so be her type. If you were alive today, you would have met him by now. I fucking lost my shit when I saw this. And it's got a bigger version of that on the back. And it basically, you know, it ends with, if he were alive today, he'd still be living with AIDS. So that was very, very, very emotional for me. The last interactive exhibit was one that I did take a picture of, and I interacted with it. I'll go ahead and show you the picture that I took here. It's supposed to be like a cemetery fence, and you can see that there's all these different ribbons tied to it, right? So it is exactly what you think it is. It's something where you're encouraged to go take a ribbon out of the basket and tie a ribbon around the fence in memory of someone who you lost to HIV/AIDS, which was like so many ribbons, so many. And this is not something that I talk about or think about very often, but my great uncle Mark, so my grandmother's brother, died before I was born from like HIV related complications. I don't know any of the details on it. I just know that that's the reason that he died. And my other uncle, my other great uncle, their brothers, is HIV positive. And now that I've gone to this place and done this thing, like, I really want to reconnect with that uncle, because I know that our family is super dysfunctional, but I feel like it's really important now, and I don't know exactly why. But yeah, like, I've like 2 gay men in my family, both of them contracted HIV, and one of them died from it, which is intense. So since I don't personally know anyone who died from that, I didn't really feel at first like it would matter or be appropriate for me to put a ribbon on there. But then it kind of struck me that he was part of my family, even though I never met him. And there are people in my family who remember him and who still care for him. And I just felt like it was important for me to tie a ribbon for him, even though there wasn't anyone else there. Like, because there wasn't anyone else there to do it for him. And I posted about this on Facebook, and his sister, my great aunt, just commented, "Thank you." And I have fucking lost, like, I thought that I was done with emotions by that time in the day. Like, after we left the exhibit, I thought I was like, okay, I can't deal with emotions anymore. I'm gonna be empty for the rest of the day. No, I saw that comment and I was like, I'm gonna die. It was crazy. So literally, like, the point of me making this video is that I want people, first of all, if you are in the Chicago area, or you ever go to Chicago, or you have the opportunity to visit this exhibit, I highly recommend it. I mean, like, be prepared emotionally, bring some tissues. They do have them around, but you might need them anyway. I want to convey to you how awful it was. If you're a youngling like me, and you don't have personal experience, if you don't know anyone who was there, one of my friends was at some of the protests that we saw pictures of there, and some of the people that she knew had made some of the artwork, and some of the patients that she knew were in some of the pieces of artwork, so I couldn't even imagine how much more emotional it would have been for her. But if you weren't there, it's hard to get a really good grasp on what happened, because it's not like we talk about it on the internet very much. The AIDS epidemic is like, it's in the past for us. It's not something we have to deal with, and that's not true. HIV is still out there. The idea of a cure is so far gone, because this was a disease that was only affecting gay men. So who the fuck cares? And that's why treatment has still been so far behind. Even 40 years later now, it's been since the AIDS epidemic was in like really full swing. So this is part of us. This is part of our past. I'm still trying to conceptualize myself as like a member of a group that has a history unto itself, and I want other people to understand that and to feel the same way, especially people in my age group. Like, it's not new that we're queer. It's not new that we're trans. Those people existed before, and they have gone through some awful shit. And you think of it as the distant past, but this was 40 years ago. Your grandparents were alive through the AIDS epidemic, most likely, if you're in my general age range. I highly encourage you to, if you're emotionally able to deal with this, to look up information about the AIDS epidemic. Or I will go ahead and find some information and link it to you down below. Even if it's just the Wikipedia page, it'll have sources to other places you can go to learn more about it. It's really important that we know this, and that we understand that the way that we are treated now is a direct result of the types of thinking that led to the deaths of so many people, just because our government neglected them because they didn't care. And it's great that 40 years later now we have marriage equality, but we are also having people trying to roll back our other rights, like transgender people being able to use the bathroom, and the kind of rhetoric that's being used against trans women, that's because they, don't have a man in a dress in your fucking bathroom. Like, it's the type of things that they're saying publicly now are tame by comparison to the things that people were saying publicly about men who had HIV back when it was not as treatable, and when it wasn't even necessarily known that it was transmitted via unsafe sex. And that became a really big push, where like condoms were being distributed all over the place by activists and protesters and all that kind of thing. It's a very difficult topic to think about, to talk about, to learn about, but I really think that it's important that we not forget that we don't just ignore that this. Everybody says so many good things about Reagan. Guess what Reagan did during the whole AIDS epidemic? Fucking nothing. Fucking nothing. Fucking nothing, which is ridiculous. It wasn't until fairly late in his presidency that he said literally anything about the topic. Meanwhile, people are dying in droves. So, Jesus Christ, again, I really, really, really think that it's important that we know about this stuff and that we educate ourselves and that we fully apprehend what this means, what this has meant to our community, and how those attitudes continue to affect us today. They weren't human. They weren't people. They didn't matter. Their lives didn't matter to the majority of people in this country, and that is awful. And that's still way too true. How quickly did people forget about Pulse? How quickly? It faded from the public mind fairly quickly after it happened, which was awful. But I guess that's all the word vomit I had about that. It was a very, very interesting experience to go, and I highly recommend, if you ever get the chance to go, you will learn so many deeply personal things and deeply political things, because those two concepts are inextricable in some situations, and this is one of them, where you have all these very personal accounts, and at the same time, everything about it was political. Everything about it was political. So I hope that you learned a little bit from this, or that this has at least piqued your interest somewhat in learning more about this aspect of the history of the LGBT community. Seriously, it's really important. If you liked this video, hit the like button for me. If you have anything that you want to say, go ahead and comment below. Like, it's free, by the way. It's a free art exhibit, so it's not like you have to pay to go there if you are already in the area. But if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them for me in the comments below. Y'all know that I'm super active down there. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. I'm probably not going to talk about this subject very much anymore. And then if you want to check out my Patreon to support the channel, or check out some of the other work that I do, you can go ahead and do that. I would really, really appreciate it. And I really, really hope that you have an okay day. Bye.